Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you all. While we wait for more people to join into the call, if you can introduce yourself in the chat room, and also answer the question, what body of water means the most to you and why? It'd be nice so that we get to connect with everyone a bit better. So your age, where you're from, your name, and the question. Yes, I believe that everyone should be able to respond to on the webinar chat. If you have problems, please do let me know, but it should be enabled. Should have been enabled. Yeah, while we wait for people to start responding, Lydia and Kristina, what body of water the water means the most to you and why?
Well, I guess I can start with the Pacific Ocean. That's from the bottom to the top. I grew up in Los Angeles. And went to the beach in Santa Monica and Zuma Beach as often as I could, including during high school when I was supposed to be in class. And it was in the Pacific Ocean island of Palau that I first learned how to scuba dive and fell in love with the deep ocean.
That is amazing. I don't think I've actually ever been that close to the Pacific Ocean, but it's really nice to hear that you had that memory and great time starting from a young age and even till nowadays working really hard for the ocean. It's amazing. What about you, Lydia?
I was gonna cheat and say the ocean because it's actually one body of water.
Good
I
idea.
don't like picking favorites. But I do think I'm a bit biased towards the polar oceans. It's where I'm trying to get into in like from a student perspective as well. So yeah, I've always been drawn to kind of cold waters.
That's great. Yeah, no, for sure. As Lydia mentioned, it's one ocean in the end of the day, so it's kind of funny to ask what body of water, which is precisely why we didn't use what ocean is your favorite ocean, because it's all connected and um, precisely that's why the session today is also the ocean climate connection, not oceans climate connection. So yeah, think we're ready. We have some good number of participants joining, so let's get started. And thank you everyone for introducing yourself on the chat. It's really nice to see people from all over the world, from all ages. I see people from 15 years old and 24, like everyone in between, from the UK, Portugal, Kansas, from the States, Mumbai, India. It's amazing. So it's going to be a really exciting session. So again, welcome everyone. And this is the first session, the Ocean Climate Connection for the Youth Leadership Training term, October and November, so the second term for this year. And today we have some amazing guests, Kristina and Lydia, that you will get to know very soon. And real quick, we will have a quick program overview for those who have never joined before, a panel introduction, and we will have our nice discussions with our panelists, Q&As, and some announcements. I added a quick fun interactive activity before our Q&As. So let's see how it goes. Fingers crossed it works well and we have a bit more interactive session. And yeah. So welcome to the leadership training, everyone. And during this youth leadership training program, really aim to build upon and refine existing advocacy skills for young people that in the end of the day, we can encourage and strengthen collaborative conservation actions locally, nationally, and globally. So throughout these sessions, you'll be able to interact and talk with experts, very seasoned, to fellow youth activists that are working in the field, network and collaborate with peers, and develop a strong foundation for all future advocacy efforts. And since 2020, our training program has reached over 5,000 youth from over 140 countries. And the content for the training is developed in collaboration with experienced leaders around the world working for the ocean and climate advocacy, including the alumni of the World Ocean Day Youth Advisory Council. And talking about that, in 2024, we launched a new multi-year action theme, which is catalyzing action for our ocean climate. And through this, we aim for a movement for transformative collaboration and to create not only a healthy blue planet, but also a more just and equitable, sustainable society. So we really hope that throughout the sessions, you'll be able to build connections, share resources, and take action. So I am Jihyun. I'll be the facilitator for the session today. I'm the Director of Youth Programs and Engagement at the Ocean Project. I'm 26 years old, from South Korea, and living in Argentina right now. And I have been involved with ocean conservation since 2020. It's been 5 years now. And I actually started, very funny enough, my very active international level discussions on ocean conservation with the High Seas Alliance as a High Seas Youth Ambassador. And today we have some very seasoned professions from the High Seas Alliance and also fellow Youth Ambassador during my term, Lydia. So it would be very nice to see how this discussion goes. Now we have Kristina today, the Senior High Seas Advisor, and also the IUCN from the IUCN Global Ocean team. She is one of the most amazing ocean leaders that I have ever met, and it's such an honor to have her here today. For over 24 years, she's been fostering the international efforts to improve conservation and management for the high seas and deep sea bed beyond national jurisdiction. And along the way, she's co-founded 5 great initiatives: the Deep Sea Conservation Coalition, Deep Ocean Stewardship Initiative, the Global Ocean Biodiversity Initiative, the Sargasso Sea Project, and the High Seas Alliance. So we are super excited to hear from you, Kristina. And we also have Lydia, who is 24 years old, a marine science student based in Sweden. And for the past 6 years, they've been organizing for climate justice and a healthy ocean, motivated by other youth who take action for the planet and their communities. I also learned so much from Lydia throughout my term. Oh, and Lydia is also one of our World Ocean Day Youth Advisory Council alumni, so it is a great panel today. Now, let's go dive into the discussion now. Or first, perhaps, Kristina and Lydia, you might want to quickly introduce yourself, although I have, to those that have joined today, and we can start discussing about the High Seas Treaty. Would you like to maybe go first, Lydia?
Sure. Yeah, I think you already did the introduction to well. So both working with the ocean as a master's student and in most of the things I do with my free time. So this is like kind of my big passion. But I think also a lot of what I do is climate activism. So I think something that's very important to me is that connection that you talked about between the ocean and the global crisis of a warming climate that we live in. Should I start with the first question?
How about we go to Kristina real quick, and then we can start the discussion about the High Seas Treaty.
Cool. Yes, I'll give it over to you.
Okay, I'm Kristina. I'm thrilled to be here, excited by the sort of coverage of our global planet. That was, we really are connected via our one ocean. And I'm only considered a leader because I guess I love to work with people and I love to rally them around important or causes that are important to me and to the rest of the planet. That I'm, as I said, a lawyer by training, and I started out in shipping law. That was sort of the world of maritime trade. Because it was sort of one of the oldest forms of law. But when I did that first dive in Palau, I sort of realized I'd rather be protecting the fish and the coral than the ships that I was representing as their protector, their representative. And so since then, I first started working on tropical coral reefs and looking at integrated management, sort of trying to go beyond just sort of species by species, but actually looking at ecosystem-based management. And then when I learned about the fact that corals could exist in cold, dark water off of Norway, as well as in the high seas, I became impassioned and determined to fill the dark hole in international ocean law and find out what we could do to help save the high seas and deep ocean.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing your experience, Kristina. And that was a very nice pathway towards our first discussion. So I first want to congratulate everyone for the over 60 ratification of the High Seas Treaty that will come into force very soon. We have 75 at the moment, I believe. And this historical agreement really shows that multilateral collaboration among countries, individuals, communities for ocean climate action is really possible, even with possible, current challenges politically in many parts of the world. So, Kristina, do you maybe want to introduce the High Seas Treaty real quick for our participants that may not be as, familiar to the High Seas Treaty?
Okay, well, almost 50% of our ocean is technically beyond national jurisdiction. It's called the high seas and the international seabed area. These are the waters beyond 200 miles from shore. Generally, that's unless you're in an enclosed sea like the Mediterranean. And the challenge is that we have this one huge international agreement that's super important, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, that was drafted in the 1970s and agreed in the 1980s, and it only really had one provision discussing the marine environment, and that was a clear-cut obligation to protect and preserve the marine environment. But in international law, nothing really gets accomplished unless you have a mechanism to make it so. So when I saw that people were talking about creating global networks in marine protected areas, and there was no way to do that in the high seas beyond national jurisdiction, I said, well, we need to pull together what we can under existing law, and if we need to craft a new international treaty. The treaty itself is not just about high seas marine protected areas. It also covers environmental impact assessments to try to make sure that any new or proposed activities are conducted in a sustainable way that don't cause significant adverse impacts on the marine environment. It also provides for the equitable sharing of the benefits of marine genetic resources. Genetic resources are the bits of a coral or a fish that carry the hereditary parts of it. You've heard about perhaps eDNA, which they can now use to analyze what species live in a particular body of water. But genetic resources are used for everything from new drug discovery to industrial processes to helping to contain the heat in vaccines as they're prepared. But an equally important part of the treaty is about capacity building and access to marine technology to really help uplift the capacity of all states on our planet to better manage, protect, and conserve our shared ocean.
Thank you, Kristina. That was a really nice overview about what the High Seas Treaty is and how it came to be and what are like the most important points of this treaty. Let's move on to the first question, which is, what this ratification means on a global level nowadays, and what it means to you personally. So if you can share a little bit about your journey on this issue, I'd say, Kristina, since you have started the discussion, you can add in that bit of the response, and then Lydia, you can take the floor afterwards.
Okay, well, this is a bit of a dream come true since it is something that I've been working on since 2001 in the first workshop in the Baltic Sea. That was far away from the ocean, but still connected. Just sort of talking about what can we legally do to create a system of high seas marine protected areas and sort of address other challenges to the marine environment. Since 2001, the movement has grown. In 2011, we founded the High Seas Alliance, which became sort of a very skillful political arm to help galvanize governmental support for the treaty, to communicate the messages in a more professional way, to engage broader audiences, and really try to uplift the topic of high seas much more high into the political discussions. I mean, if you've heard about Rio Plus 20 in Rio de Janeiro, the High Seas Treaty and whether the negotiations would be launched was one of the big issues on the table. So ratification is super exciting because it's an example of how the world can come together despite the political storms, to sort of go on this journey together, sort of launching, as Rena Lee likes to say, that the president of the whole negotiation sort of said, launching on the new journey, the new voyage of taking the ship that has come to the shore now off to well-provisioned and to future better things.
Thank you. And yes, Lydia.
Yeah, no, I think on one hand, I really want to agree that this is a huge step. I think a lot of people haven't even heard in their lives about the High Seas Treaty, but as you mentioned, Kristina, it goes back all the way to 2001. That's the year I was born. And since then, a group of people have been continuously pushing stubbornly with so much resolve and determination, for one thing, and coming together across countries and all kinds of other borders to make this happen. And I think that is very difficult to do, but also so amazing that it can happen. So I do see this as a huge step. But on the other hand, I also want to say that if I can be a bit provocative, it means nothing at all until it actually has its effects that we want to see, until we actually use it, because the High Seas Treaty is more, I see more or less like a tool we can use to protect the high seas and to have better regulations for activities that can take place in the high seas and have effects on the high seas. But now we also have to use this tool in an effective way and have the level of ambition that really will push it to have the change that we want it to have, and to bring that into effect. So yeah, I think it's a huge step on the way, but of course it's not the entire way just yet. Yeah.
No, yeah, I think this really shows how long time we need to actually have a treaty, and then how much of like even more efforts we need in order to really have these treaties work as they should, instead of just being a piece of paper and black letters with a white sheet. So what do you think are some of the next steps with the implementation for the High Seas Treaty to ensure that we do have a very strong and a meaningful treaty in play?
I guess I could start. Basically, you need at least three prongs. You need a strong conference of parties, grounded on proper rules of procedure. Not a very exciting topic, but so fundamental to the way this international institution is going to operate. Who gets to have a voice? How do they vote? Can we really keep this away from being an entirely consensus, but still very much mindful of the need for universal support for high seas marine protected areas and other decisions? So the first is the conference of parties. The second is the work towards future high seas marine protected areas. That was starting to identify potential candidates of sites that are in need of protection. There is work already going on within the High Seas Alliance and the membership of the High Seas Alliance, within IUCN, as within many different organizations and countries. And so it's exciting to see the progress everywhere from the Salas y Gomez and Nazca Ridges off Chile and Peru, to the Emperor Seamounts in the North Pacific, to the Sargasso Sea that I've been working on since 2010. That was building the science case, and building the support does take some while. The treaty will enter into force on January 17th, 2026, so we don't have that much time. And we want to also reach the goal of having 30% of the ocean in marine protected areas by 2030. So we need to get an efficient conference of parties. We need to get these candidate sites. But as the foundation, we need to get the financial support there that can be used to lift the capacity of developing countries to ratify the agreement, develop the legislation that they need in order to effectively ratify, and then for people to be able to participate in the decision-making processes, come to the meetings, as well as have informed processes to actually review future environmental impact assessments and so on. So finance, capacity, marine protected area proposals, and proper institutions. That's 4. I cheated. Lydia.
And I think if I can just add something to all of that, it's that if we want the treaty to be have ambition and really follow through with that, we also need accountability. Because if a conference of parties happens, that is still just the combination of its member states and their respective political leaders. So I think we also need accountability from the public. We need ocean literacy, and we need people who say, we're seeing what you're doing, and we're going to hold you accountable, to not find some loopholes, but to actually put in place meaningful ocean protection and a connected network of marine protected areas, so that it's not just these paper parks of protected areas, but actually the places that will most effectively be able to safeguard biodiversity. So I think the public also has a big role to play, and it's a better time than ever to get more people on board in caring about the ocean, even in kind of if the high seas can seem a bit far away, because by definition they are. But to see how it does affect us, and to empower people to take a stance and see, also express to their own political representatives what we think they need to do. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Amazing. Yeah, no, I think the really, something to really take away is I have seen a lot of other fellow young leaders that feel like, oh, I don't know how to interact, or I feel like I'm not really making any change in this field in general, because you're not in the UN ground, or you're not making a political, writing the policy for these treaties. But I think it's really important to always notice that everyone has a role to play in, to ensure that this all goes, properly and works really for humanity. I think that's a really nice way to move on to ocean climate connection, which is what we will be discussing about now. So while, as Lydia mentioned, it seems like the high seas super far away, and by definition it technically is, the ocean and climate are so very connected in every way possible, physically, biologically, and ecologically. However, at a lot of times people see these two not really as an interconnected environment, when it really is. But gratefully, we have been hearing more ocean action is climate action kind of viewpoints. So on this front, what part do you think the integration of ocean and climate action really played in accomplishing the ratification of the treaty?
I just want to start with something I noticed. I've been at the UN Ocean Conference twice, once this summer in Nice in France, and once 3 years prior. And there is so much more ambition now. I feel just there is such a different climate of how urgent we perceive the ocean and climate to be. And I do think that some of that can be attributed to the upsurge the climate movement had. Maybe between like 2018 and 2020, when there was a lot of global mobilization happening and a lot of momentum for the climate. And that's also the time when I really saw like a peak in many more people who were in more the ocean space, just talking about how the ocean and climate are connected. And I do think that that kind of momentum carries over into the momentum we've seen in some of the new treaties that have come in recent years. So I think if you're campaigning for the ocean, you're campaigning for the climate. And if you're campaigning for the climate, you're campaigning for the ocean. So it's really not about choosing which is more important, but it's supporting each other. And I think it's been really great to see that happen here too.
That's well, I would recall that in the Paris Agreement, when it was established, agreed in 2015, it was a huge uphill battle to get the word ocean into the agreement itself. So the ocean and climate connection was definitely not on the radar screen of many governments at the time. But when we were negotiating sort of the early stages, the preparatory committee stages of the BB&J agreement, well, before it became the BB&J agreement, IUCN and colleagues organized sort of a series of workshops on some of the key issues. And one of them, of course, was the impact of climate change on the ocean, particularly the deep ocean. And what I learned is that the ocean is the largest sink for CO2 on the planet. That it's not just a sort of physical function, it's also the critters that live in the ocean that play a huge role in absorbing and sort of sequestering the carbon into the deep ocean. But it's also being affected physically by this increasing carbon dioxide, by warming, by losing oxygen, and by becoming more stratified so that the layers of oxygen-rich waters don't meet with the layers of nutrient-rich waters. So we're really fundamentally altering large ocean-scale processes and functions and structures. So it was more out of alarm that I was motivated to sort of start working on the climate change and trying to teach governments why it was so important to build this international treaty. And I would say, working with Lisa Levin and the scientists from the Deep Ocean Stewardship Initiative, there was more and more climate put in as the treaty negotiations progressed. And I think it was only in some of the last sessions that they got in what I think will be a really key principle and approach of ecosystem resilience that talks about, let me just read this for a moment because the language is important. That's when you're implementing the treaty, you're supposed to be guided by everything from precaution, ecosystem approach, the best scientific information available, plus knowledge from indigenous peoples and local communities. But there's also one that's called an approach that builds ecosystem resilience, including to the adverse effects of climate change and ocean acidification, and also maintains and restores ecosystem integrity, including the carbon cycling services that underpin the role of the ocean in climate change. And I think in many ways, this principle also provides that safety net as well as a strict guardrail for what we don't want to see in any potential new projects that come to the ocean, and why it's so important to establish marine protected areas to buffer them from other activities that could undermine the ecosystem integrity. So I'm hoping as we get into actual implementation of the treaty that this principle really comes to guide future action.
It's really nice to hear that that has been included more and more recently. One thing that I've also been hearing a lot, like still even to this day, although like compared to the past, it has improved, is that in UNCCC and Conference of the Parties, there is like a section to discuss about the ocean, but compared to other sections, it's still very small, and the discourse for the ocean is not as big or focused on in many countries or in many international treaties or whatnot. So I think that change step by step really will allow us to see why ocean action is climate action and vice versa. So thank you so much for the insights. And I just want to additionally ask, oh yes, Kristina, yes.
Yes, can I just raise that the Ocean and Climate Platform, I think, has had a huge role in also bringing the ocean into the climate change arena. It was through sort of their dialogues that got people thinking about the connection in a very climate-oriented world. So we work in our ocean world, but we need compatriots in other parts and other treaties to really help carry forward the messages, and they're doing a great job.
Absolutely, absolutely. So seeing these kinds of changes happening, what other issues connecting the ocean and climate do you think can really utilize this momentum? And especially from, after the treaty enters into force and all these ocean climate connection views and how it really is important for, the general climate and whatnot. How do you think other ocean related issues such as the deep sea bed moratorium and what was it, the WTO subsidies, the legal fish or overfishing subsidies? How do you think all these ocean related issues can really utilize this momentum of ocean and climate connection?
Lydia, you go ahead.
I do think that first and foremost, we need so much more climate action. There is not at all enough happening. We're still going in the wrong direction. And I think it's very important to note that we cannot safeguard the ocean without very fast and very determined and ambitious climate action that needs to happen as soon as possible by cutting fossil fuel emissions as soon as possible, by restoring ecosystems both in land and both on land and in the ocean as soon as possible, by addressing land use and ocean use. And I think that in some ways, getting this treaty to happen often requires that you get as many allies as possible. And I've seen sometimes people try to tone down a little bit their messaging on climate because now we need this treaty to happen and we need to get people on board. And if that's what's keeping them from getting on board, we kind of want to tone it down there a bit so we can get them to do this other thing. But I think going forward, we need to get more clear, even in ocean spaces, even though there has been way more messaging on that connection, on if we don't do a lot of very drastic measures for the climate now, we can only kind of delay the impact it was going to have on the ocean. And so I think we need to get a little bit more of a stronger voice there. And I think we could use this momentum also to, in implementation of the treaty, to talk about how can we do this that does not ignore the more indirect impacts on the high seas that we see with a lot of activities, which includes activities with high carbon emissions. And of course, that's very difficult because everything is really complex legally and in frame of biodiversity. But I think I would like to see more people daring to speak out on climate and specifically on the fossil fuel industry, and also the lobbyism that is happening from the fossil fuel industry to block that kind of action in very many international negotiations. So that is something I would really like to see going forward.
Those are all really important points. So thank you, Lydia, for raising those. And just to add from, I guess, my more academic perspective, is the other two issues that keep me up at night are marine carbon dioxide removal technologies and potential new industry of mesopelagic fisheries. And this is in addition to deep seabed mining, which now, I mean, one of the arguments against deep sea mining, besides we don't need it and it's highly destructive, is that it would be destroying sort of the carbon that is already sequestered in the seabed. And why do you need something that is actually disturbing the natural carbon sequestration processes in the seabed as well as in the water column? That was mesopelagic fishing could interfere with sort of this wonderful migration of life from the deeper ocean waters down to 1,000 meters up to the moonlit surface at night, and they go up to feed, and then they take all the good food and their poops down with them. And this is part of a lovely chain of action that actually it's life that modulates the sequestration of carbon into the deep ocean. And if you start sucking out huge amounts of biomass to feed other fish, we'd actually be undermining the web of life that supports us all. And the other is sort of in the urgency to act, or perhaps in their urgency to delay the need to act on reducing carbon dioxide emissions and oil production, is some sort of technology whizzes have constructed some so-called solutions to climate change, dealing with new technologies for dumping iron into the ocean, and the theory that if you stimulate phytoplankton that sort of sucks up the sunlight and these nutrients, that the phytoplankton will then sink down to the bottom of the deep sea more quickly than our natural carbon process will, and then help to sequester more and more carbon. But many are failing to sort of take into consideration other types of science, like the microbiologist and the ecologist, who might say, you might be producing more greenhouse gases like methane and nitrous oxide that are far more potent in the short term than the carbon that you're actually getting out of the atmosphere. So we want to make sure that in our desperation, because we're not acting fast enough, that we don't do things that really undermine our natural carbon sequestration processes and the health of the ocean itself. So I'm hoping that the attention, momentum, as well as the basic environmental impact assessment processes of the BB&J agreement can play a huge role on that front too. Thanks.
Thank you both for your inputs. That's really nice to hear from both sides, from seasoned academia and from more of a younger perspective on more of the urgency and more of why we need to take action now, because that's been something that I've been seeing constantly. The discourse when you're a bit more seasoned and in a higher level discussion versus when you're more with civil society science and more of a younger activist, sometimes how fast we want the movement to be versus how that actually can be for bureaucratic reasons often seem to have some sort of collision, while both tend to have the same goal for conservation. So I think it was really nice to hear both sides and what we all need to take in consideration for both sides when we take action. And now moving on to the integrating intersectionality and justice, because this has also been a very big session for a very big part of BB&J. And because in ocean conservation policy space, historically, there has been a lot of exclusion for groups that are the most critically impacted, coastal communities, including small island countries, women, youth, and etc. So in this context, what do you think we can do to ensure that these groups are better represented in global decision making, and how can we support in doing so?
Maybe you want to go first on this one?
Okay, well, I guess we can learn from what has happened already. That was where many small island states have got together to petition the United Nations General Assembly, as well as the International Court of Justice and the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea, for actual interpretations of the law regarding the obligations of states to take action to protect the marine environment and to protect the climate system. And one of these actions in international court was started by a group of law students in the Pacific. So without the initiative of youth in many of these instances, who do have the most at stake in what's going forward, a lot of the action today wouldn't have happened. Indigenous peoples have also made great strides in getting themselves a voice in the Arctic world, as well as at the Convention on Biological Diversity. And at the High Seas Treaty, we're also talking about ways to make sure that their voices are appropriately listened to in the scientific and technical body and so on. But that doesn't carve out space for youth, for women, for the ocean itself to have a voice in these processes. So I'm hoping we can work more closely with some of the human rights people and also to learn from what the Convention on Biological Diversity has done with respect to bringing these groups much more closely into the conferences of parties and into the committees and into actually trying to underpin the decisions that are being made. Lydia, I hope you have some more ideas.
Yeah, I think something that we can see in most of your examples is that inclusion doesn't usually start with someone who's already in power saying, oh, actually, I think this group is not included here. We should probably include them. It's always the people themselves that are not being listened to, that are not being given a seat at the table, who are organizing and who are fighting to make space for themselves. And unfortunately, that's something that's seems to be always the case. But I think a lot of us here are either young people, a lot of us are from all over the world, and parts of various groups. So I think we can start by thinking, okay, why am I not being included? How can I organize with other people in my situation to show up and be annoying, be a nuisance, and say, hi, we deserve a space at the table, because that is how it's going to happen. It doesn't happen by asking nicely often. It happens by just saying, okay, we have knowledge on this, we have expertise on this, and you should listen to us. But also, if you are given a voice in a certain setting, that doesn't need to be at the biggest table of the United Nations, but that can be in an organization or in some kind of leading role. You can also ask yourself, okay, who else is being given a voice and who is still left out? Because even as youth, some of us have had the opportunity to go to a lot of conferences to speak at very high level events, but it's still often people like me, people from the global north, and other kinds of people. Youth is not like one homogenous group, right? Are still left out. So it's also then our responsibility to point that out and to ask what is being done about it, and to not stop asking before there is actually more inclusion and more diversity, because we're not going to succeed without a diversity of voices coming with a diversity of solutions, and especially not without the people who are at the front lines and who know more than any of us about the ocean and how people are already being affected by the changes in the ocean. So I think we both have to stand up for ourselves and take responsibility to point out the injustices in the places we are included in.
That was amazing. I think that the responses kind of, goes as well for the High Seas Treaty. So it's really nice to hear this all coming together. And I also have felt the same as you, Lydia, because for the UN Ocean Conference that happened in Nice this year, there were a lot of youth movements prior to the conference. And we had a new youth coalition from, a lot of organizations that are youth focused. And then, we came together as a grassroots and made this coalition. But then in the end of the day, those that really helped formatting and forming that coalition, a lot of them weren't able to join because of multiple reasons, including a lack of space or accreditation or whatnot for young people. So I think it's always important to acknowledge that sometimes while people do a lot of ocean climate advocacy and action in their space, bringing them to an international conference or a decision-making space, it's not as easy as we hope so, which is why we need to intentionally, like those especially who are already in that global decision-making space need to notice that and intentionally make that change or bring up that discourse in these big UN grounds or whatnot, so that those positions are ensured. Yeah, is there anything you want to add, or are we allowed to move on to the next question?
Go ahead.
Okay. So now we're going to focus a little bit more on youth involvement on the global scale. And I've been seeing a lot of questions on the Q&A already on how, as a young middle schooler, high schooler, or young leader, can you make a meaningful participation in driving ocean climate action? Because as we just mentioned, there's oftentimes global political structures that limit young people's influence in these discourses. And just as we also discussed, treaties like the High Seas Treaty really require international cooperation and decentralized decision-making so that multiple voices, variety of voices can be heard and can be included into the discussion. So perhaps, Lydia, you might want to start with responding to the question. How did young people really help shape this global agreement, and how can they continue to do so during the implementation phase?
I think we often think as young people or youth as this one isolated group, right? That is kind of there and will be affected by a lot of the decisions made today, but are also helpless and in the background and, what is happening? But in reality, youth are everywhere, in every part of the process. There are young people who are driving change, who are being the first people to stand up, who have the highest ambitions. Everywhere I go, I see young people who are extremely knowledgeable, extremely qualified. And I think it's less about asking where are the youth, but more like recognizing they're everywhere and then uplifting that action that is already happening and supporting that. Because what young people are often lacking is financial resources and also, of course, education needs to be more widely available. And then actually one thing I wanted to point out, which I found at the ocean conference, Jihyun, you were already mentioning that there was this launching of the coalition of emerging ocean leaders, which with a wonderful panel of a lot of different youth organizations talking about their work and all kinds of changes they had already made. And I found it so impressive and really hopeful to see how much was happening all over the world, both on a local and global scale and everything in between. But then there was someone from the UN talking, and first of all, congratulating them, but then also telling the young people in this panel to get qualified. And I found that so offensive to everyone up there on that stage, because I had just heard from the most qualified people I could imagine. So I think we have to reframe how we think about youth and recognize that youth are already educating themselves, pushing for change and leading change everywhere. And if we can uplift that, we can get many more young people on board as well. Yeah.
I find that fascinating that they're saying you need to get more qualified when I do see people all the time that know so much. And at the One Ocean Science Congress, I was part of the One Ocean Science Committee. We sort of developed some recommendations, and one of the key ones was to get away from just thinking of science as expert knowledge of a refined few individuals, but really starting to look at experiential knowledge and traditional knowledge and local community knowledge, and that it needs to be sort of a much more embracing and inclusive concept of what it is that informs decisions. That's so clearly they had not been they had not read those recommendations. But it is sort of a built-in prejudice, I think, of many grown-ups is to think, well, the only one who's qualified to speak about the law is a lawyer. But no, I mean, people are affected by the laws all the time, and you can educate yourself. I had to educate myself on the international law of wildlife conservation and pollution control. It wasn't really around when I was in law school. We can do a lot with the skill set that we currently have, but also one of the key characteristics of success might be eternal curiosity. That's, it is the desire to learn more and to utilize what it is you do know, and recognize that we may not know everything, but we need to keep striving for it. And I think there will be, a huge number of chances for young people to help shape the High Seas Treaty and the Climate Change Treaty. And I think it will be important for people, yes, to keep going to the UN Ocean summits, but also to go to the Climate Change Conference of Parties. If you care about the ocean, that might be an even more important place to be. um, the climate conference have become a bit of a zoo in terms of so many people there. But the Ocean Pavilion becomes a giant marketing opportunity. And if there aren't some honest voices there to say, hey, wait a minute, are these really going to solve the problem of climate change rather than just sort of create new problems in our ocean? This is not the direction we need to be going. The High Seas Treaty, I think we will constantly have, like state governments need to be motivated, and I think, as you said, Lydia, to keep themselves accountable to make sure that they are doing their utmost to keep advancing on the BB&J agreement. So thanks.
Thank you both for your inputs. That was really nice to hear as a young person myself too, because I think I feel both sides of this struggle. But since we are running short in time, we're going to connect the next two questions with this part of the questions on how can youth help on the ocean climate, and including that of the BB&J Treaty. So as we've been saying throughout the entire time, ratification is amazing. We need to celebrate the small and big wins. But then we need to have concrete actions, right? And in that process, what can youth do, more than just, while educating yourself on these matters are one of the most essential and important things, what other ways are there for young people to take concrete actions for the ocean, and what sort of other policy or treaty opportunities do you think youth should get more involved and know about, and how can youth really do that aside from speaking at international level conferences, because not everyone can do it. So in a local level, in a national level, and even in global level, what do you think youth can do? Youth as yourself, Lydia, and also as a more seasoned professional, what do you think youth can do with your viewpoint, Kristina? So I'd be interested to hear from both sides.
Okay, Lydia gets to go first.
Okay, this is a big question. But I think, first of all, I just want to say that anything you can do is valuable, and there's not one way to take action that is better than all other ways. We all live in different countries with different political climates. There are very different circumstances we have to live in. So if one person can do something that gets way more attention from the media, it does not necessarily have a bigger effect. If you can do something in a country where you're, for example, not allowed to protest on the streets safely, it can still have a really big impact if you do something that is considered more nice, or just writing an email. So it's really not like there's one way to do activism or advocacy work. Do what works for you. The most important thing is that you do something. And the second thing I would say is that take up space as much as you can, because it's really easy to feel like you don't belong in a room at a discussion table, because you feel like everyone else knows so much more than you. They've all worked with this for 10 years. I don't know all the technical details, legal intricacies. I don't know enough about this ecosystem or whatever. You don't have to. you hold a different kind of knowledge that is just as important to the conversation. And it's actually the people who are already having as their profession to work with these issues. It's their responsibility to learn from you and to learn from your knowledge and what it is like as a young person, maybe living in a coastal community or living with the constant threat of ecological breakdown in your own lifetime. So you are so important. Take your space and demand your space, even if it makes people uncomfortable. I think that is my biggest message. And also, last of all, take care of yourself, because a lot of us start doing this without any financial compensation, all in our free times, and it's so easy to burn out. And it's so important to do this in the long run and not for a short period of time and then not be able to anymore. So take care of yourselves and of the people in your community, because that is also one of our most important responsibilities.
Beautifully said. That was taking care of yourself and your community is so, so important, as well as taking space and making sure that your voice is heard. I think just what I would add to that is really doing what feels best to you in the space and place that you are. That was if it's educating people, if it's planting mangroves, if it is, going to the local government to complain. That is amazing and that is important. It's getting into the international policy arena is challenging, but there are organizations like the Sustainable Ocean Alliance that does create mechanisms for youth leaders to be able to attend some of these meetings. And I've been amazed to see that the UN General Assembly is opening up spaces to hear from youth. But I think people have finally recognized that the young people of today have the vision that we need to get us to tomorrow. That was we generically over 60 sort of start to think in shorter time increments of 10 years, 20 years, as opposed to having 60 or 70 years in your projected lifespan. And it's really important to bring that long-term horizon to these discussions that, you know, what would you say, arguments today can be overcome by looking at the solutions we need for tomorrow. So finding common interests between, what seem to be disparate groups by saying, what do we want the planet to be like in 50 years? Do you want it to be dominated by industry that's, developed to suck out the carbon from the ocean and growing seaweed everywhere and everywhere? Or do you want the planet to remain or retain some level of natural beauty and quality? That was, thinking through what you would really like to get out of your life and what matters most to you, while maintaining that sort of balance between sanity, love, compassion for the planet and for each other is really an important part of the path ahead. So thank you for taking it.
This is really beautiful to hear. Thank you both for your responses, and I am pretty sure a lot of our participants are enjoying the discourse as well. I've been seeing a lot of thank yous. This is amazing. So it's really heartwarming because I also sometimes struggle with feeling burnt out and feeling like, oh, am I actually making the change? Am I doing enough? But when you think about it, you are, because you are doing something, and there's a lot of people that don't even know that this is happening. But even if you're here listening to this webinar, you're already doing something for the ocean, for your community, getting yourself really knowledgeable on this front so that you can share it with other fellow young people. So that was really great, some amazing action points. And some direct action that you can take right now is a lot of people have also been asking, oh, how can we engage more? How can we find resources? So also on the World Ocean Day site, you'll be able to find a lot of World Ocean Day activities itself. all around the world, and you yourself can even encourage yourself and your community, your school, your club to do a World Ocean Day event, even if you're not near the coastal area. Like for me, I'm in Argentina, in Córdoba, which is in the middle of the country, like literally. So there's no ocean unless I take a bus for like 12 hours. But despite that, you still can do something for the ocean, right? And there's a lot of resources on the High Seas Alliance page where you as youth can share your messages on your social media, or write petitions, make videos to make others more knowledgeable, and to take action for such matters. So these were just some direct resources that we thought would be nice to share with you. So there are a lot of questions, and we're already at the top of the hour. So I'm thinking we will respond about, how about we respond about 2-3 questions right now, and those questions that we cannot get to, we can respond to them via email in the future. I'll be leaving my contact later on as well. So you can email me with your questions, and I'm pretty sure Lydia and Kristina would be happy to give you a response back. So real quick, let's go through some of the Q&As. So there were quite a few that a lot of people wanted to hear the response from, and I think it's great to discuss this, especially on this session. I think there's a lot of young people and a lot of students in landlocked communities. So again, going back to the front on how you can be involved. Let me quickly find it. So the question was, how can you start advocating as a young teenager, because it's impossible to get any sort of political attention in general for things that they care about? And even if they do, so combining 2 questions, even if they do have a space to discuss, they have the fear of being shut down by others who seem to know more, or who thinks that it's a useless topic. So how can you also increase the confidence in bringing up the ocean climate issues? I think you would be able to give some good insight, Lydia, but also Kristina, you can go first.
Okay. Just quickly, I think there is power in numbers. That was, starting yourself as a core, but if you can find a few colleagues who share your same interests, if you can educate them to why they should share your same interests, and then build a network that way, I think it's much easier to have the confidence of the parade behind you. That was when you're not the sole voice. And I think confidence is something that is always hard to retain, but can be bolstered by passion and determination. That was, if there's nobody else who can do what you're doing, then somehow the courage comes through. That was, and I think that the more you do something that takes courage, the greater courage you have to keep going forward. That was, so just practice, practice, practice. And those first steps are not the end of the world if you don't succeed. That was, you just keep trying and trying and trying. You'll do great. Thanks.
I really want to just say I agree so much with the part about you can have so much more of an impact if you're in a group, if you're organizing together with other people. You as one person can have a way bigger impact in an organized space than if you're by yourself. But I do understand it's really difficult to start finding a group, especially if you feel like no one else around you cares about these things. So my tip for that would be to join a group that might not have the exact same focus as you, that might not specifically talk about BB&J if you're interested in advocating for BB&J, but maybe about the ocean in general, or just the environment in general, and reach out to them and say, hi, I would really love to start a group talking about this issue and educating ourselves and each other, and maybe doing some writing to politicians or whatever it is you want to do, and help them get the word out, because they already have a network. And they're always, I mean, I cannot think of a single environmental organization that is not happy for young people to reach out to them, say, hi, I want to start a group and do this work. So don't be shy to contact people who already have a network and ask them for help. And you will find more people who are interested in doing something, because so many people are in the position that they really want to take action but don't know how. So if you can be that spark that lights that flame, I think you'll very likely to succeed.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the next 3 sessions that we have in this leadership training as well, we'll be talking about how to organize your own campaign, how to utilize social media, fundraising, etc., how to even connect more with young people. So I think it would be nice to take advantage of the program to learn more of the practical tools with people that are already in that field. And one last question, I think this is something that is very important but not discussed enough, is one of our participants said it's difficult when so much contribution on climate issues carried out by corporations and governments that are hard to convince of the importance of our planet's health. So how can we keep up hope that we can and we will change things for the better?
Yeah, that's a tough one, but sadly, we don't have much choice. That it's only through that determined optimism that you are going to make a change. That's if you do give up hope, nothing is going to change. And I think there is still enough good in people that despite the challenges, it's worth chipping away and finding those good people in the higher places who do have the power to make the change that we need. People have kids, people have children that they do care about, trying to find common interest again in a better future helps to create the hope that we can create it. So keep at it, please.
I think something I just want to say on that is that change that is driven by one individual with a lot of power or a lot of money is never going to be as stable and as consistent as the change that comes from below, from the people who organize together and grassroots movement. So even though there might be temporary pushbacks of individual companies that only care about their profits, or individual, just very powerful individuals that just push against everything that so many people are advocating for, that is so much less likely to last, because that power is so fragile if it only relies on having a lot of money or being in a certain position. Meanwhile, if you build something with a lot of people on board and a strong community behind it, you can really create something that impacts lasting change. And I think that's what gives me a lot of hope in the work that we're all trying to do.
Absolutely. No, like again, like it's so easy to get burned out or feel so little, but even just being here and communicating or meeting friends and talking about these issues and just working with people that are like-minded, or like the small wins for the ocean. I think that just really gives a bit of more motivation and hope that there is going to be change, and there is change as long as there are people that still are willing to make the change. So yes, Kristina.
I'm just noticing hope on the webinar chat, and a lot of people are interested in exchanging emails and WhatsApp links and all of that. So I'm hoping you will somehow preserve this conversation and allow the people, the amazing people who have joined at 3 o'clock in the morning their time, to really have a chance to come together and form a group, just even inspired by some of this discussion today. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. No, I think it's thanks to you, to the amazing panelists today, that really, enlightened some hope into these young folks. Because I honestly have never seen this much amount of people so motivated and hopeful and sharing these much emails. This is insanely amazing. So again, I really appreciate everyone that has been joining into the discourse, and we'll try to. The recording will definitely be up on our World Ocean Day channel, and you will be receiving our newsletters with opportunities, and we're also searching ways to have more local engagement with our regional hubs as well. So we will ensure to have these emails and people to stay connected. Initially, I was thinking about a little book lab session with 2 questions on your one word that you thought about was really standing out throughout the session and whatnot. But because we are already 8 minutes late, I would say we're going to go to the announcements real quick and then go back for those that are willing to stay a bit more. So real quick, again, the program schedule is as follows. The next session will be on communications and social media, same time on Saturday. Next week, the third one will be on event planning and fundraising, and the fourth one will be on campaign organizing. So there's going to be young people and a bit more seasoned people as well joining into the conversation to share their experience. So if you have any questions beforehand on how to engage more through social media or how to do fundraising or what kind of campaigns you want to do but are having difficulties on, please do get those questions ready so that the conversation can go more smoothly and nicely. And this is regarding the time zone, because the program was done through Eastern American time, and there is the daylight change going on the 2nd on November. The first 3 sessions will be on the same time, but the last one is going to change by an hour. So please do check just in case what time it's going to be at your local time, so that you don't accidentally miss or wait for an hour more than you need to. And again, all the recordings are going to be on our YouTube page. And after all of the program is done, after the 4 sessions are over, we will be sending a feedback survey. And once you fill in the feedback survey, you'll be able to earn a certificate of completion. So please do stay noted on that. And if you have any questions, doubt, or if you just want to connect more with our network or our speakers, please do email me to jlee@theoceanproject.org. And we'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. So thank you so much, both Kristina, Lydia, and everyone that has been joining in this session. I am so honored to have moderated this session. I've learned so much as well, and feel more motivated to continue doing the work that I am doing. So thank you all. If you want to have any last words for the participants, please do go ahead.
Well, thank you so much. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to join you here today and to see this opportunity, the platform that we've provided to create that spark for people to join together. I admire it and encourage you. And yeah, please do reach out to me for further questions. And we are launching for early career professionals an early ocean stewardship award that was for just a few people a year to the extent we can, but to provide some of the same nurturing and background building, capacity building that you're already doing at a much earlier stage. So I hope we can find some way to complement and work together for the next generation of ocean leaders. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for me too. And also thank you so much for organizing this. It's such a well thought out program. And to everyone who's joining, it's so nice to see how much the engagement there is. And I just can't wait for like the next generation, people and all you will accomplish. And I think you're already like taking so many steps on that way. So yeah. Thank you, Jihyun, for your great moderation, and Kristina. It's been really great talking to you.
Thank you so much, both Kristina, Lydia. It's always my happiness to talk with you too. So thank you once again. And before we close the session, real quick, for the Youth Advisory Council members, please do not forget to join the collaboration space to have further discussions. And yeah, for everyone else, I really hope you have a great end of the week, evening, night, morning, and we really hope to see you on the next sessions. Thank you. Bye.